Hey, this is Malika of Evanston Live TV, and we have back with us Dr. Gilo Logan. Many of you really enjoyed his interview with me. When was that, Dr. Logan? A couple of weeks
A couple
ago?
of weeks ago.
Yes, he dove into COVID-19 and the effects that it's really having on the Black and Latinx community. And today, we're about to dive in to a whole nother layer of things that are going on right now in the country. Many of you are familiar with the story, the recent story. Well, really, it's not recent. A young man at the time, 25 years old, Ahmaud Arbery, if I'm saying his last name correctly, was out for a jog. He was an athlete, a young Black man. His family said that's what he does. If it was raining outside, if it wasn't raining outside, he would be out jogging. That was just his thing. And we know a lot of people like that. They just love to go out jogging. So now, it's not even safe to just jog while Black. He was gunned down, hunted down. It was captured on video back on February 23rd, 2020. And no arrests were made until May 7th, 2020. So, with my mind, God only knows how many other young Black men out there were victimized by these men in between February 23rd and May 7th. God only knows. And how many were before Ahmaud. So by the grace of God, I always say that was nothing but a hand of God that somebody turned that video in. And it was so hard to watch. And I think it was Will Smith that said, this has always been going on. It's just being filmed now. And even though we've had video proof of things going on, they still get away with it. So we're enraged right now. And I wanted to bring you on, Dr. Logan, because your line of work, you get asked all around the country to come speak at universities and different corporations to help people deal with respecting each other's differences, different cultural backgrounds, sexual preference, religious backgrounds. You make people be able to work in the same space, live in the same space, knowing that they're different and respecting that. So I wanted to bring you on today to, give us some insight on how to deal with this, because it's a rage that just, it brings us to tears. I know it's impacting everybody around the country, this story, and so many stories like it. But for us, the Black community, it's like a wound, a hole in the soul every time we see it happening. And then there's no justice. So what is your take on this? And you as a Black man watching that video, and you have sons, young sons, one in college now, right? Yeah. What went through your mind?
I cried. Mm-hmm. It still hurts when I see it, when I think about it. Because I think of my own sons, I think of my own experience, I think of things my father's been through, my ancestors and our people, and on and on and on. I think as a people, as a community, we need to make sure that we do not apologize for how we feel. The rage, the outrage, the anger, the frustration, the disappointment, the bewilderment, the confusion, call it what you will. These are normal human emotions. Mm-hmm. And we are human beings. And to see something like this happen and to experience it, these are normal. Those who do not feel it, those are the abnormal ones. Those are the ones who need to be invested to be looked at, because that's not normal. Mm-hmm. So first, I just say we embrace how we feel, and secondly, as we do that, we need to act out. We need to speak out. And I say that for the sake of social justice. I say that for our own mental health, and I say that for our own hearts and our own stress levels. It's for our own safety and our own health as well, that we need to find constructive, creative, consolidated ways to act out, to speak out, and to channel that negativity into positive change.
Mm-hmm. I know a lot of my girlfriends who have teenage sons or sons in their early 20s. The first thing they did was like pick up a phone to call them just to make sure that they're safe, and it's real. It is.
Real.
It's so real. And I remember having a conversation with a white woman once. She said, well, you know, white people, we have our tragedies too. And I said, but how often, you know, do you really have to worry about your children just taking a walk down the street and some yahoos in a pickup truck just gun them down, and then to stab you even further in the heart, the killers don't even get arrested. They don't even get persecuted. They get no sentence. They just get to go home and live life as if nothing ever happened. How often does that happen?
Right. It's it's all relative for sure. You know, just as you were speaking, that I thought of my own sons, and one in particular, Olu. I just put a Facebook post on it yesterday. He runs every day. We live here in Evanston. He goes running throughout different parts of the city. Yesterday he ran in honor of the brother, but he runs also through North Evanston along the lakefront. And actually, just a few weeks ago here in Evanston, he was running near Haven School, and he got followed. So some woman felt the right or the audacity or the privilege to follow him. So she drove, you know, whatever, 2.5 miles per hour as he's running. She's driving along with him for a couple of blocks, just looking at him. And he turns the corner, and she turns the corner too. And she's just driving and watching him. And then he turns the corner again, and eventually she went on her way. But that was just a few weeks ago here in Evanston. Who knows what she was thinking? But why? You know, why he? Why was he being followed? And I mean, it just begs for many of us was the obvious question of just racial bias, and what was the perception? You know, of, and again, what did she perceive that he was running from a? You know, he committed a burglary and he was running to escape, or like he chasing somebody, or just running for his health. And that's part of the irony of it, Malika, is that with this virus, you know, as we talked about a few weeks ago, there's underlying health conditions impacting our community disproportionately, right? We talked about the high blood pressure, diabetes, asthma, and et cetera. Then I also touched on the underlying societal conditions that are creating those health conditions. And that's the systemic racism, that's the redlining, so on and so forth. So then, you know, we employ our people to get healthier, you know, to do what we can. And here, this young brother was jogging, not my son, Ahmaud, he was running in his own neighborhood, like in his own, as my son was, he was running in his own neighborhood. So here we get criticized when we're not healthy, but yet the brother's taking actions to be healthy. And he's not only gunned down, he's gunned down in his own neighborhood. And it was a lynching, essentially. And it's just beyond, it's unfathomable. It's unfathomable. But, you know, again, so I just thought of my sons, and Olu ran in his honor yesterday.
Yeah, that was beautiful. I saw that posting. I wish we could all just get out there and run, and, you know, situation that we're in, which is pretty much, it's like they're using COVID-19 right now to get rid of us, to get rid of us by affecting the economy. It's, I don't even know what to say right now. I don't even know. I really just, I'm in so much, I'm so emotional right now.
So am I.
So emotional right now.
So am I. It's, you know, also like another just irony to it is, you know, people are speaking out, understandably so, that they're concerned about people protesting and not practicing, you know, physical distancing. and not, protesting with masks on. And I understand that. And because we need to be safe. But I think what some people fail to understand is that for many of us, it's reached that point that our own health and safety, sometimes we will sacrifice for the sake of the cause that we are fighting for. And that's who we have always been as a people. And I'm not condoning that. I'm not saying that we should intentionally go out and endanger ourselves and protest and march without mask on and have, not practicing physical distancing. We should. But I'm just simply saying some of those who don't, it's to that point, and we need to realize that some of them are sacrificing their own lives. Some of them feel like they have nothing to lose. Some of us have reached that point, and that can be seen in some people's behavior.
So what would you say if, the work was open, everyone's back at work, and, well, of course, this is going to happen again. We know it.
Right.
Another Ahmaud story is going to surface. How do you handle those conversations with people who, like you said, aren't normal and don't really feel this impact? They don't feel that hole in the soul, in the heart, to see this young Black man. He was fighting for his life. I mean, we saw it on the video. He was scared. He was running. He was scared. They blocked him off. He tried to fight off the gun. And, for, like you said, it's not normal for someone not to feel I don't care what your background is, to not feel what that young man was feeling. He was terrified.
And then one of the state prosecutors down there had the audacity to say, well, if he had just frozen, his life would have been saved. So he was actually wrong. And it's like, in a situation like that, when it's a split-second decision, we are reacting instinctively based on what we're experiencing. And in that split second, it's as they say, fight or flight. It's kill or be killed. And he's fighting for his life. I mean, you're already running.
Right.
You're already seeing that you're being encased. And then you already see the weapons. Are you going to try to outrun the shotgun? No, you're going to, I would think that I'm going to try to at least grab it to prevent that gun from shooting me, to defend myself. So I just see the common sense, the human instinct to defend yourself in situations like that. But to your question, Malika, I feel that, and I feel very strongly about a couple of these points. One, was it 1933? Carter G. Woodson, Miseducation of the Negro, right? So here, this brother, the father of Negro History Week, which was Black History Month, the second brother to get his PhD from Harvard after Du Bois. So here, this brother, 1933, writes Miseducation of the Negro, and how we've internalized racism and what that looks like in our behavior. But I'm in the process of writing a piece. I don't have the exact title of it, but it's Miseducation of White Folks. Now, we too often focus on the miseducation of the Negro or people of color. Now, we have been miseducated. But if we've been educated in this system, we've all been miseducated, regardless of our race, class, gender, ethnicity, sexual orientation, etc. And too often, I think we overlook the fact that white folks have been miseducated as well, in terms of who they are, in terms of who we are, and in terms of who we all are. So hence, if, so I do work in the line of diversity, inclusion, equity, right, and leadership. And the root word, the diversity is a Latin word. And the root of that is diversus. And diversus means variety, not difference. Most people think that diversity means difference. It means variety. And the reason why that's so insignificant is because variety highlights the commonality. So it's a variety of types of people. It highlights the fact that we're all people. The variety of apples, it highlights the fact that they're all apples. A variety of types of cars or automobiles. But the emphasis is on the commonality. And in our culture here, where we separate, the mind and the body, we're too focused on the differences between us and not the commonality. So hence people who have been miseducated, including white people and people of color, we focus on the differences and not the commonality. So hence too many white people don't see the humanity in Black people, and they don't see our shared humanity, they don't see our shared origins, and they don't see our shared destiny. So hence, I think that's a huge part of the problem. A huge part of that. We've all been miseducated, but we focus on the miseducation of people of color. And it needs to be focused on all of us, starting with us, but also a dual lens on white people as well, because they have been miseducated. Because if we've been miseducated to see ourselves as inferior, or what's the flip side of that? They've been miseducated to see themselves as superior.
Mm, mm, mm. That brings me to, I had a reporter from the Daily Northwestern interview me a couple days ago, and she said, "How would you describe, I don't know when the article is coming out, but she had asked me how would I describe racism in Evanston, and I said it's different, and I can't just say it's Evanston, but it's
Right.
different because." You can have dinner with a white person that still thinks they can invite you over to their house for dinner, and you're thinking they're cool and they see you for you, you see them for them, and they got your bag, you got that bag, and then you come to find out this person that you're breaking bread with still feels like they're superior to you, and it comes out eventually in some. I'm not going to say all, but some.
Sure, that's right.
I, I tried to explain that to her, and I said they can smile in your face and invite you for dinner and still have this belief, this understanding that they are superior to you and that your community is inferior to them, even though you might have the same career, you might make the same money, you might drive the same car, you might live in the same neighborhood. How do you deal with that kind of racism?
Yeah,
What would you call that racism? What would you call that?
yeah, it's an effect of racism, and I think one thing that needs to be clarified is because the words with race and racism are they're so hypersensitive, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's not to say that white people are intentionally trying to be racist. I think the intentionality often gets lost. But as is often said, there's intention, but there's also impact. And it's the impact that's most important, not necessarily our intentions. The intentions count, because a lot of times they're not trying to be racist. And I think we as people, it's incumbent upon us to recognize that, because too often we want to overlook that and strictly deal with the impact. Now, we can't negate the impact, but we have to also, because if there's a malicious racist out there and someone who did something unintentionally, I mean, there is a difference. And I think we need to qualify that. But its impact on us, nonetheless, is real. And that's what we have to deal with. So in Evanston, what's happened here partially, I mean, I don't want to give a whole historical, soliloquy on it, but partially integration has happened at our expense. Integration has happened on our backs. It's our schools that were closed. Foster School was closed. It's the Emerson Street YMCA that was closed. It's Family Focus that's in threatening of being closed. It's the business district on Church and Dodge that's been shut down and damaged from integration. The doctors and lawyers that lived in our communities, and they dissipated. So integration has happened at our expense. I mean, children today, when schools are in session, are being bused disproportionately from the Black community to integrate white schools. So that's what it looks like here in Evanston. It is unequal, it is inequitable, and hence it is very problematic. But to speak specifically to your question, which was my second point, I feel racial and ethnic identity development is a common component that's missing in all of this. Now, in all this racial equity and social justice, and I'm not hearing enough about racial and ethnic identity development. And honestly, that's really a whole separate conversation, because that's a very deep thing. It's the fact of the matter that because we live in a racialized society, we all formulate a racial identity, whether we are aware of it or not. And that is not just people of color, white people as well. So we're socialized into it. It's in the air we breathe. It's in the water that we drink. It's in the history books. It's in the music. It's in the movies and television shows. It's part of how we're socialized into these identities of what it means or not to be Black or white or brown or et cetera. So too often, white people are, and many of us as well, are oblivious to that process in which we're socialized. So the beginning, there's many stages of that. The first stage for white people is obliviousness. You know, they're just, which is similar to our first stage, because we're just oblivious of racism. At a certain point, you know, when you're a little kid, you don't know what's going on. You're not aware of that. But then for white people, that obliviousness lasts a lot longer because they have the privilege of being the dominant group, dominant in terms of power. Whereas to us, we don't have that privilege. So many of us, our first memories of being Black is living in a white world, something that was said to us, something that was done to us. So that quote unquote encounter gave us an awakening as to, wait a minute, there's something that's different here. And as children, we're faced with that. Whereas for white people, they can go through elementary school, middle school, a lot of times through college, a lot of times beyond, and are still in the obliviousness state to understand the role of race and racism and their role in it, whether if it's intentional or unintentional, but we're all players and we're all victims in it. And that's something that needs to be dealt with at its core, racial and ethnic identity development, and how that impacts the workforce, how that impacts our educational system, how that impacts our communities and our neighborhoods, how that impacts the whole notion of should a school be in the 5th ward. I mean, I can go on and on and on, but a lot of that goes back down to how we identify from a racial and or ethnic standpoint.
Okay, and that brings me to, you know, many of us have gotten in those conversations where they're like, well, I'm not racist. You know, I've never lynched anyone. I've never killed a Black person. I've never done any of that. But they don't, I'm not saying all, so please, you know, I'm not generalizing all white people, but some white people do not see that closing down a school in the 5th ward of Evanston as a racist act. And so they see racism as the Klan from way back in the day, where they were born. But they don't see that just Foster School was closed not too long ago. I mean, you know, you have people who can still come and tell you the story of when Foster School closed, okay? So they don't see that, and they don't see voting against having a school in the 5th ward because of taxes. They weren't worried about their taxes when Robert Crown was built, but they darn sure worried about their taxes if a school is built in the 5th ward. Then they got problems with that. They don't see that as racism, or that it's impacting their Black friends that they have over for dinner and they hang out with and they go marching with for causes and take pictures with. How do, it's not, I guess it's not up to us for them to realize you're just as bad as your ancestors who were lynching. Okay, it's just as bad.
Wow.
In my point of view, I'm not speaking for.
No, and I think you make an important distinction that I just want to underscore because it's really important, and that's the fact that there's a difference between people and the person, and there's white people, there's Black people, there's brown people, Asian people, but then there's the person, and yes, each person within that group is an individual that should be looked at and recognized on an individual basis. But at the same time, as individuals, we're all part of different larger groups, and hence a different racial group. So yeah, we can't say all white people, but we can say many, there's maybe too many white people, but we want to look at each one of them individually, as we should be looked at individually as well. But to your point, yeah, so when we hear about racism or just take white supremacy, like that term itself sends off all kind of red flags and signals to different people in different ways. And we have the stereotypical notion of white supremacy being the Ku Klux Klan, being the skinheads, being the cross burning on the yards. That's white supremacy in its most visible form. But white supremacy is not that. White supremacy is an ideology that's been systematized in our society. So hence it's part and parcel of the foundation of our nation. And again, hence we're all impacted by it. So a white person today who says, well, my ancestors never enslaved anyone, that very well may be true. But just by virtue of being white, not that it's your fault individually, but you are the recipient, you are the benefactor, the beneficiary of the legacy and the privileges, the white privilege that you are entitled to by virtue of being white. And that's something that needs to be recognized. And hence, likewise, on the flip side for us, we're targeted, or we are many times disadvantaged because of our race, not necessarily because of who we are individually or what we have done or not done, but by virtue of the racial group in which people see or categorize us to be a member of, typically Black, white, and brown. So yeah, there's a legacy, there's a history of white supremacy, but it's an ideology. And it's not this overt, Ku Klux Klan and burning torches, which is that as well. But it's an ideology that shows itself in our values, it shows itself in our biases, in our preferences, in our behaviors.
Mm, mm. Well, do you think we will ever, our world, our society will ever come to a place where our commonality is more in the forefront than our different? Do you think we'll ever see that day where there really is equality, where everyone, even on an economic level, everyone is just all right? There is no poverty. Everyone is good. They're comfortable. Everybody's good. You still have you're wealthy, you're rich, but no one is starving and homeless and unable to get an education or get medical attention if they need it. Do you think that day, you think we'll ever see that day?
No, we won't see that day, but it's something, we are one chain in the link of a multi-generational struggle towards that level of justice. And our ancestors, many, 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 many millennial and centuries and decades before us were parts of that link. We have to take that mantle and we have to play our part. And we have to see that this is something much bigger than what's going to happen in our lifetime. This began long before us. This is going to continue long after us. But while we are here on earth, have to be responsible. We are accountable, and it all begins with who we are individually. So no, we are not going to see it in our lifetime. And that's not to discourage anyone. That's just to be realistic, because as our ancestors said, keep your eyes on the prize. And the prize is not something that's just in your lifetime. It's the prize for our people. It's the prize for humanity. And if humanity is going to exist, we're going to have to keep striving towards that ideal situation. And we're going to have to realize it, or else humanity is not going to exist. That's my take on it.
Yeah, I like that. Everything that we do right now is going to help generations from now. Actions that we take now. Yes, yes.
Just as what we have, we're the recipient of what our ancestors did before us. So we're passing it forward.
So, Dr. Logan, before I let you go, what is one thing that you would tell the viewers out there who are really feeling that hole? I mean, some of us, the hole just gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and it's like bleeding. What would you say to the Black community who are just really consumed by this right now, what would be your message to them about Ahmaud Arbery and their own family members who, you know, have experienced situations like Ahmaud and so many others?
Mm. Wow. Well, it takes me back actually to a Facebook post I saw this morning. I don't know whose quote this is, but I thought it was brilliant. And it said something to the effect of that we have to remember that they didn't make the arrest because they saw the video. They made the arrest because we saw the video.
Mhm.
Right? So to our people and to people who are allies with us, I would say that's the power to the people. That's the power that we possess. But we have to have eyes to see. We have to have ears to hear. We have to have a mind to think critically, and we got a body to act out. So we have to act constructively, proactively, not just reactively. We have to act collectively. And again, it's for the betterment of our society, which is, it also includes people who are white, because they live in this society as well. You can't segregate I mean, some things are segregated in terms of some certain levels of privilege, but the state of our society, we are all impacted by that. We can't segregate that. So it's for the betterment of our society, the betterment of our people, and the betterment of our situation. But we have to act, because it's also detrimental to our physical health. That level of stress, that's post-traumatic stress syndrome, or as it's been called, post-traumatic slave syndrome. That is real. So when we look at the levels of mental health, of depression, and the increasing rates of suicide in the Black community, things that we used to associate with white people, like, we're not necessarily seeing the toll. I mean, we feel it, and we kind of we know it, but we may not necessarily understand. And this is part of mental health as well, and the impact that racism has on our physical health, our mental health, but also I believe that when do we look at racism as being part of a mental health issue as well, and start examining that, and not just those who are targeted by it, but those who hold and who perpetuate and feed that ideology. That's problematic. So I would say to your question, to our people, again, we have to keep the faith. That's who we are as a people. That's who we are. That's how we've gotten this far. As bad as it is, some of the things our ancestors have been through have been a whole lot worse. And if we don't know our history, we will lose sight of that, and we will lose sight of how good we still have it, and yet how bad it can actually be, and also how much we have that we can make a difference with in our society. So we have to keep the faith. We have to get a sense of history. We need to understand our own racial and ethnic identity, development process, and how racism impacts us, and the different stages of awareness we go through, and the different emotional stages. But we have to act out constructively, because otherwise it's very destructive, not only to society, but to our own community, our own people, and our own individual health. And I want to leave that very broad as opposed to specific things to do, because there's a lot of that being discussed on Facebook. And there's a lot of things, which I think is great, because it's a potpourri of ideas and things that people can do. I want to leave it kind of more conceptual to that, and allow people to pick and choose what they feel is relevant for them. I know before I was listing specific things. Now I want to kind of leave it at a conceptual level and say that we need to act, because I don't want to tell people how to act or what they should do at this point, but I want people to figure that out for themselves, just as I'm doing for myself as well.
Okay, and Dr. Lowe, well, one of the things you had mentioned, the mental health. If you could let everybody know how to contact you, I'll put it in the description of this post. Contact you because though I know you speak to corporations and big, lecture university classrooms, sometimes I think people need one-on-one with someone like yourself, because it is a mental health, and I don't necessarily think a therapist can break down what you just broke down and then get to the core of how people see race identity.
Mm-hmm.
So how can people get in touch with you? I mean, this would be the perfect time. This is downtime, a lot going on. They can
Yeah,
have a
yeah,
session with you online. They could do
yeah,
all, you know.
sure. Yeah. Well, I mean, I can be so the website is www.loganconsultingservices.com. And that's going to be standing for another couple of weeks because I'm launching a new website, which is going to be drloganspeaks.com. So we're going to have a web launch. Going to make sure to communicate that via all the social channels. But for the next couple of weeks, loganconsultingservices.com. I'll put my business individual email out there, and that's logan@loganconsultingservices.com. So I can be reached there, I can be contacted, and if I can be of service, I mean, that's what I do personally, that's what I do as a community member, and that's what I do professionally. Because to your point, yeah, I mean, I work with organizations and companies and businesses, but I also work with teams, and I work with leaders who impact a whole lot of people, but also work with individuals. I work with parents, I work with students who are struggling. I work with people who are trying to navigate some of the complexities of their family life situations. So I do a lot of coaching and consulting and training, to your point, even at an individual level. So I'm here to serve in those capacities.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Logan. I'm going to let you get back to your work. I know you probably are really busy now.
It's busy now. It's busy, and really a lot of the work is working towards this web launch, and I'm publishing my book this fall, and I'm putting a sample of the book in the web launch as like a free giveaway. So we're doing some of the finalizing of some of the details for the web launch. So yes, it's a busy time, but this is important. So I want to thank you for the opportunity, and as I always say, you are key because you provide a platform, not just for me, but for a whole lot of people who have a whole lot to say, and you're a conduit in that sense. And I thank you so much for that. And I thank you for the opportunity.
All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Logan.
Okay.
Tell me I said hello.
All right, I will. Take care.
All right.
Bye-bye, everyone.
All right, you guys, this has been Malika of Evanston Live TV. And whew, I tell you, Dr. Logan always brings a little extra something, another way for us to view things, see things. And I myself have sat down with him. We've had long coffee discussions about commonality and race identity and, all of that. And, it's very, very helpful. So I think, he's someone, if that's something that you're need a little more information on, contact Dr. Logan on that. So again, you all be safe out there. Do the 6 feet distance, wash your hands, wear your gloves, definitely wear your masks, and take your shoes off at the door so you don't track COVID-19 into your house. And you guys just please be safe out there. Be safe. And let's take this anger and this passion that we're feeling and do something really constructive to bring about a change. And even if we don't see the change in our lifetime today, we know that it will impact generations from now and be something really, really great. Okay, you guys have a great weekend. This is Malika, Evanston Live TV.